É. Então, boa tarde a todos e a todas. Good afternoon to all of you. Just to tell you that this session will be live on YouTube and will be recorded and available afterwards. But it's a pleasure to have you here. The first, I'm Francisco Ferreira. I'm the president of Zero, who's promoting this event here at the Portuguese Pavilion. The first thing that we have to regret is that, as you know, there are negotiations going on, and unfortunately, Portugal is actually now taking care of one of the areas of negotiation within the EU, and therefore there's no possibility for the Portuguese minister to come, and we just knew it recently. But anyway, it will be important for us to have this discussion, and because it's for us one of the most important topics, not only for the Portuguese situation, but definitely for the European one. I would like, without further ado, and we also have one of the guests that will, one of the persons that will be in the panel that will arrive slightly late. So Nur Yafai will arrive slightly late, but we will start in order not to delay our discussion. And I will start to introduce the panel and ask you to actually come over. So I will start with Antonella Battaglini. She's director of the Renewables Grid Initiative. The second one, maybe. Yep. And the Renewables Grid Initiative is an organization that has that mixes both environmental NGOs such as Zero and other NGOs from other countries in Europe, and the TSOs, the transmission system operators, which in the case of Portugal is REN, Redes Energéticas Nacionais, and indeed it's one of the critical, I would say, support for this discussion on how to improve renewables and overtaking the problems that we have with the transmission lines, and both in terms of availability and the reduction impact, particularly in the environment, but also in other aspects. Then I'd like to introduce Nuno Banza. Nuno is the president of the Portuguese National Institute for Nature Conservation in Portugal. The Portuguese National Institute for Nature Conservation and Forests. And the Institute has a leading role in integrating throughout the environmental impact assessment studies and all the legal process and discussion in order to safeguard the importance of nature conservation in projects such as renewables. And then we have Yolanda Montes. She's the Director of Environment, Sustainability, Innovation and Climate Change. Please, in the middle, I'm gonna sit over here. So it's the Director of Sustainability, Innovation and Climate Change within EDP Spain. EDP is Energias de Portugal, and it's now a global company, and it's an electricity producer, but also with a considerable weight in terms of the amount of renewable electricity that is produced in different parts of the world. Without further ado, I will start now from the conversation that we have scheduled for this afternoon. Here you actually have the different participants in this discussion. Okay, so I will pass on the micro. I think you have a second mic. Then you have to get one from us. I will actually start with Nuno. We have the question is not only for Portugal. It's for Europe, particularly after the Repower EU and this need to accelerate the implementation of renewables. And my point is that we have, in the case of Portugal, for instance, we're basically almost multiplying by 10 the need for solar power until 2030. We have also almost a doubling of the power required for wind onshore, and we have now 10 gigawatts that will start with 2 gigawatts by 2030 on wind offshore. Portugal, like some other countries, has a large percentage of nature protected areas. We have around 22-25%. We actually, if we combine some other types of areas, that was announced by the government that we have 34% of terrestrial classified areas in terms of natural values. Do you believe that it is possible for us to actually combine these two aspects of making Portugal one of the leading countries with 85% minimum of renewable electricity by 2030, and also safeguard all the important conservation aspects that we have in the country?
So, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here today. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Good afternoon for the colleagues of the panel. I would like to address 2 or 3 items that I think it will help us to understand a little better what is the approach that we are using for this in Portugal. The first is that even when you think on nature protected areas, and truly Portugal has already in the inland more than 30% of the areas in the different classification aspects are nature protected or biosphere or our sites. We are more or less on 4%. And the point is that on the first approach, what we tried to do was something like when we worked on the go-to areas and work done with us and with the Portuguese Environmental Agency and also the National Laboratory for Energy and Geology. The approach was something like, let's look to all the areas and try to understand where can we have a less concern, or which are the areas that we are expecting less conflict with nature conservation goals. And we did that. And we reached some map that we called go-to areas. And
so we have a preliminary...
We have something map. Like a screening, yeah.
Okay.
We did something like a screening to help us to reduce the conflicts with nature conservation goals. But
so we kind of anticipated the
point is that,
areas mapping.
Yeah. When you talk about these challenges that we have for the Repower EU and the short time that we have to accomplish some goals, You need to do it different. Otherwise, you will be truly lost in the different regulations and a lot of different difficulties that you find when you are making the permitting for the installations. And the point is that when we went to do the go-to areas to that approach, what we were trying to do was something like, let's try to make it easy and less conflictuous. And I think we reached something like that. It was a good approach, and I think it's giving already some results. But we did it now, and so a lot of the conflicts that we are facing now come from some premises that were under licensing before this approach.
So you believe that now with your work, things will be simplified?
It was hard because in some places we rejected. Very recently, we rejected a project in Algarve, in São Brás do from Iberdrola. It's public, it's not a secret, and it was rejected. And we rejected some more than half of the wind towers on the north, on the Montezinho Park, because of the habitat for the conservation of the wolves, and so we rejected more than half of the towers. And we are trying to have some compatibilization between the goals that we want to address under the nature conservation objectives, but also from energy. And I think this approach that we had, it helped a lot, and we believe that in the future the results will be a lot better. But okay.
Okay, thank you for this first intervention. Antonella, what is the role of RGI? Because for us to have goals in a lot of places, from the ocean to the terrestrial areas, the grid is essential. Without a connection with the grid, and the grid has impacts. What has been the role of RGI, at least at European level, to actually prevent some of the conflicts that we have been finding everywhere, I would say, between the need and the acceleration of renewables and nature conservation, eventually social aspects, also related with renewables implementation.
Thank you very much. This is a competition on who shouts louder.
It has,
yes.
It has to be.
Okay, let's go for that. So the Renewables Grid Initiative is an association of transmission system operators, environmental and climate NGOs from across Europe. We set up RGI in 2009. So we have 15 years of experience, and I would like to stress this because today the grid is becoming quite high up in the political agenda due to the fact that if we want to grow renewables, indeed, we need to build grids. You have heard about the tripling up of renewables, but what does it mean for grid infrastructure? And so everyone is now struggling and very keen to work on grids, but knowledge on grids is a niche knowledge. In the course of these 15 years of work, what we have been doing is mainly trying to reconcile conflicting interests. We have proven over and over again that it is actually possible to build grids without impacting nature by planning them together, by actually co-developing the solutions between the conservation community and the grid operators. Of course, when the emergency regulation in Europe were put in place as a response of the Russian invasion to Ukraine, everyone has taken kind of the excuse, if you allow me, to say, okay, energy security is the biggest threat right now, and therefore we need to speed up permitting, and speeding up permitting resulted in many cases in an attempt to deregulate environmental protection laws and also to reduce the stakeholder engagement processes. 1 year later, we see that actually this is not the right approach. If we indeed want to build all the energy infrastructure that is needed for the energy transition, for energy security, and for climate mitigation and security, we need to build this infrastructure well, with people, and for the people. And so I would like to stress the fact that it's not that it is possible to minimize, compensate, impact, and even restore nature, that it is possible to involve local communities. But it's the only path. There is no other choice to that. And RGI has been proving this over and over again.
Thank you very much. I will come back to all of you, but before Yolanda, I would like to introduce Nur Aifai. She's the European Director of the Global Policy and Institutional Partnerships of the Nature Conservancy. My question to you is, do you think that we have red lines when it comes to the implementation of renewables? Are there any, if you have to identify the critical aspects where I cannot, have a conciliation between both interests, what would be those red lines?
Thanks for the question, and thanks to all of you for your patience as I was telling the organisers I would be a bit late. And the reason for that is I was just at the Nordics Pavilion talking about nature, and now I'm here at the Portuguese Pavilion talking about climate and nature and people, right? So all of these three things can and must go hand in hand as we think about how we accelerate investments, how we develop policy, and how we all play a role in helping to drive the solutions. So for those of you who don't know us, just because I wasn't here at the start, I'll just say quickly, the Nature Conservancy, 1/10 of us is a scientist. So we take a very science-led approach to what we do. And our scientists in North America pioneered an approach called Site Renewables Right. And what that does was identify ways of minimizing conflict with biodiversity and communities, working with the private sector right from the beginning to identify ways of siting renewables in a responsible manner. And it was, and it has been, a key factor, I think a success factor in the way that onshore wind in North America has grown in recent years. And we were delighted, actually, that Site Renewables Right won an award from RGI just last year, the Environmental Good Practice Award in Europe. So it's recognised as a model, a toolkit, one of many out there, that demonstrate that you can indeed site renewables in a way that works for people, for planet, and for nature. So red lines. Well, absolutely there are red lines. There are cases where solar and wind onshore or offshore get it right. And there are also cases where we get it very, very wrong. And when we think about what those red lines are, we need to remember that any new policy framework, such as the introduction of renewable acceleration areas, which is the latest development we've seen in the EU Renewable Energy Directive, does not obviate the need to do still proper environmental impact assessment. It does not, as Antonello was saying, mean that you can shortcut, or avoid at all engaging properly and thoughtfully from the very beginning with local stakeholders. Those things are essential. Just the idea of having renewable acceleration areas is that if you can do all of those things quickly in a science-led way, and upfront, then yes, you should be able to speed up the permitting process, because permitting remains the number one obstacle to getting investments going fast. So we know at the Nature Conservancy that the urgency requires us to go fast, but in order to go fast, we've got to go smart to go fast.
Oh, I think you made an excellent bridge to Yolanda, because EDP is a promoter of different renewable sources, from wind to solar. And my point is exactly, have you been playing this type of role that Antonella and Noor mentioned in particular, involving people, as also Nuno said, are you, in your projects, how are you engaging the communities in order to evaluate and prevent the conflicts that sometimes arises when you have, because there are always impacts anyway, but to actually have the people with this goal instead of against this goal of expanding renewable electricity production.
Okay, thank you very much first for being here, for inviting EDP to this session. Well, as you say, that's one of the most important things when you're talking about projects, and it's the social acceptance. Otherwise, if you don't get the social acceptance, you won't be able to develop the project. That's something that we know from the beginning. So how can we manage that? How can we engage our stakeholders? I think that the best approach is to first to have an early stage approach, because as soon as you talk with the community, as soon as they understand the project, the easier is to go ahead. The second one is to be ready to hear, to understand, because every territory is different. Every territory has a need completely apart from the other, depending on the economic situation, the social situation, the labor force available, the evolution of the economy in that certain area. So what we do is to establish open channels of communication with all the community, just to be able to receive as soon as possible all the inconvenience, all the pinpoints that you could have in that project, and try to manage all these things with. We have developed programs to approach the community and trying to work with the things that they are more concerned. For example, the employment, or with upskilling or reskilling the people in the community. Also, we work also with all the environmental and nature conservancy topics that could arise. But anyway, it's difficult.
What are the main, if you have to identify, what are the main restrictions that you have been finding in the project you have been promoting? What are the main reasons that you believe are blocking your implementation?
Well, very often we face a problem with the land use.
Okay.
The land is scarce, and it's quite difficult sometimes to change the use of that land. And so that could be one of the most important ones, I would say.
Okay. So coming back to Nuno, so you explained that your institute has been involved in different conversations with other institutions in Portugal to assure that we have an indication of the best locations, or at least the least conflicting locations,
less
at least
problematic.
for acceleration of renewables. Can you now be a little bit more precise on what you think might be, as I asked Noor, what would be the red lines from a nature conservation point of view? And do you think you have the sufficient information to actually do kind of
correct
screening, a preliminary assessment, such voters won't be spending time, looking at the projects, the details, and then they fail.
Yeah, let's see. Problems deciding on you are screening or making an environmental impact assessment, it's obviously information. And truly, we are reaching the end of a process that lasts for 5 years, mainly related to SACs, special areas for conservation, under the Natura 2000. And only now we have already the cartography for habitats and species, and for the red lists we have almost all of them concluded, and also the management plans with the management goals and objectives. And so I think we have one reality before all these information was available, and a different reality after the use of this information. Nevertheless, I think when I heard talking about the land use, and Portugal has, I think it's not specifically a problem from Portugal, but Portugal has a problem of land use. We have a lot of areas that they are able to be used on several different uses, but they are not being used. Nevertheless, they are under some protection regime that not always environmental regimes. I'm thinking about agricultural national or the forest regime.
So a lot of the restrictions are not directly related with nature conservation.
Some of the restrictions are not directly related to nature conservation area.
But do you think that nature conservation has a lot of weight in terms of the unavailability of locations?
The point is that we are having both. We are going on with some projects. You have a lot of areas that were not in the past classified as with interest for conservation, but they were used for agriculture or forests, and now they are not having use. And some of that areas are now being occupied with projects of renewables, mainly PV, and that use is bringing back the discussion for the use of the land. And in a lot of the projects that we are discussing now, mainly the biggest ones, they are not being built under areas specifically classified for nature conservation. But even so, some of them have very big dimension, and they will be installed or settled in previously agriculture areas or previously forest areas. The point is that even
so there is a conflict with destroying some of the areas.
There's always a conflict, and mainly because some of the areas that in the past you've been or as they using them for agriculture, and as time passed by, they might got some interest also for nature conservation. And now when we are settling, or when we to help to avoid the nature conservation objectives, we have not. It's not uncommon to have a lot of people saying that the places where the projects are being settled have also nature conservation interest.
No, because they're getting
they are getting that interest.
Again.
And they were not under specific rules for nature conservation. So what we are trying to reach is some minimum. We know that it's not a good way to, and we with all the different regimes that we used, not only nature conservation figures like national or European,
But also other criteria to be included.
Forests and others. Even so, there are a lot of areas that can be at least assessed to have PV or other projects. Yeah.
Thank you. Antonella, what I want to ask is that, do you think that the TSOs, the transmission system operators, are ready to embrace this challenge of minimizing the impacts in different areas of Europe, to actually get the grid to the places where the impacts are the lowest, or where you have a project to be implemented, but the grid is far away and it might have some impacts to get there? Can we that in many cases is an extra cost and an extra negotiation. What is your feeling? Is it with the conversations that you have with the different grid operators, are they fully ready to answer the challenge?
Thanks.
And I know you're not a grid operator.
So I would say the grid operator that are members of RGI, yes, but they are not alone. A lot of the measures have to be approved by the energy regulators. And so your question is complicated because it makes a reference in a point in time that is today. It has been said, however, that to reach full decarbonization, to scale up electrification, we need 8 million kilometers of grids. This goes around the globe multiple times. It means that today you build a line in a community, in a nature environment, and after 2 years you got to go back and build more. And so we need long-term planning, we need integrated planning, energy system level. So you were asking what are the red lines? Well, I would like to answer that question. The red lines is that we need to avoid waste, because if we choose wasteful processes, we use the very limited resources that we have, including space. Every time we do something that requires transformation process, it means we waste primary energy, and this we should not do. It's clear that electrification is to be prioritized. It is also clear that electrification is not sufficient. Electricity cannot be the only solutions. But then what is the optimum solution? How do we optimize the different pieces? So this is red tape number one. Red tape number two, whenever we build something and we go into a location, an environment or a social environment, we need to leave it better than the way we found it. And third, we need to measure, monitor, and report. Today, there is a witch hunt for renewables, batteries, charging, whatever, because I thought they are destroying our environment. But let's start comparing apples with apples. We cannot just say renewables have an environmental impact, and therefore we keep doing oil and gas without having a common measurement to see what is the least evil. Thank you.
Thank you. Noor, I'd like to ask you if you feel that under nature conservation objectives that we have from the Convention of Biodiversity, from the different countries, are renewables the number one threat? What can we do to actually get people involved instead going with this challenge of decarbonization and electrification, instead of going against more and more renewables? Is it a problem of communication? Or is it a problem of indeed damaging the nature that you should preserve? What is really the type of approach that you might see in different countries to overtake this?
Thank you for that question. And in order to answer that question, I'm just going to pick up first on something Antonella just said. Because it is absolutely crazy that still, in some parts of the world today, including in Europe, in some parts of Europe, it is harder to get a permit for a renewable energy facility than a fossil fuel plant.
Yeah, in many parts of the world. Eventually, even in Europe, I would say.
I think we can all agree that's the situation that we also need to tackle here. Let's not lose sight of that. I think that's what you were trying to get at as well, Antonella. So you asked about the CBD, the Kunming-Montreal Agreement. Obviously, we're here as guests of the UNFCCC, the Climate Convention. We have to implement the goals of both the Paris Agreement and the Global Biodiversity Framework. And we at the Nature Conservancy absolutely believe that we can and should be doing both together. And that the investments that we do have, both from the public sector, but also from the private sector, can and should be harnessed to be able to drive both of those goals at the same time. And when it comes to accelerating renewables, we are supporting absolutely the goal to triple renewable energies. But we do believe that it can and should be done in harmony with people and nature. And that is why earlier this week, as the Nature Conservancy, we'd made a joint declaration with the Global Renewables Alliance on a 5-point plan for tripling renewable energy in a nature positive, just and equitable way. And that's because we already see lots of great initiatives out there that are aiming to build capacity and to do just that. Some of the panelists on today's event are involved in. I can think of one. Antonella's organisation was launching the Ginger Initiative, for example, very much a part of that. I know that companies like EDP, we do in Europe have environmental leadership from both some of our organisations and from some of our companies. And we do need to tap into that when it comes to thinking about the global goals. And that's another reason why, as part of that 5-point action plan, and I welcome you to take a look at that and see where some of your work might fit into that, we are calling for an internationally recognised set of principles that will show the way on best practice for siting and investable in renewables. We need that. We can't just rely on having pockets of best practice in some parts of Europe.
But does that reach and engage the people or not, the communities? Because I think sometimes we have all these studies, all these declarations, but then you have people against. So how can we overcome this?
You're absolutely right. We need to build that together, and then we need to take it to the grassroots. We need to take it to people. At the Nature Conservancy, we think of this in terms of what we call the 3 Cs. So that's climate. It's conflict, avoiding conflict, but it's also communities. And as was said earlier, we can't do it without them.
Antonella wants to say something, and I think you should do some marketing of Ginger.
Yeah, so I will market Ginger in a moment. What we have been doing in RGI is exactly setting up collaborative projects on the ground between the grid operator, the environmental and climate NGOs to actually move from ink on paper into real actions. I would say there is a fatigue of initiative. When you come to the COP, it's so overwhelming how many initiatives. Despite that, we did launch Ginger on the 5th of December and the Grid Academy. But these are rather, they're not initiatives, they are platforms that are aimed at providing technical assistance to implement things. Ginger stands, it's a beautiful name, come on, a bit of excitement. Ginger stands for Global Initiative for Nature Grids and Renewables. And this is really the first time that we are putting in such a visible global contest both the renewables and the grids. The grids continue to be the forgotten children. And the Grid Academy is also a technical assistance platform because a lot of countries are simply not investing in renewables because they don't know how to integrate them. And in Europe, we have very high renewable penetration. In Portugal, for sure, but also in Ireland, where there is a different mix in the system with mainly wind. And it is difficult to run a system with wind. It's easier with hydro. So, but congratulations to Portugal and to Ireland for increasing renewables so fast. The point is that this knowledge is very limited. And so having global initiatives is good, but translating this into real action, it is much more needed today.
Yolanda, I think that's... So this is working? Yes, it is. EDP has a goal, which is by 2030, no assets in terms of fossil fuels, so fully renewable. How do you think that's manageable? How do you think you can, with all the obstacles, or from the time, even with acceleration zones, accelerating renewables, how in the next 7 years or 6 years do you believe that you're going to expand both in Portugal, in Spain, and in other countries to actually be consistent with the triple of power
capacity.
renewables that is being discussed here at the COP?
Well, sometimes when you arise one of these questions, the problem is the money. But this is not the case. The funds are already there for being used to deploy the renewables. So we are committed to invest 25,000 billion euros in renewables. But as you say, we have to be all on the same process, because we need to really develop this new capacity. Well, we are looking also to some innovations that could help us in this. We've developed the onshore wind facilities to take advantage of the oceans in the places where the seabed is deeper and you have a lower influence over the biodiversity. We are working also on floating solar to take advantage of the reservoirs that we already have and use them for both hydro and solar. We are also working with the customers just to develop the distributing generation on the roofs that are places that really don't have any problem with nature. We are trying also to take the most of our assets. So hybridization is another thing that we are working in, because we are taking advantage of the sites that we already have and increase the capacity, adding renewables, for example, to those assets. So I think that we need to go deeper in these alternative solutions. We need to be agnostic and try to develop renewables everywhere, because the goals are so demanding.
Do you think that EDP could also involve communities in this, participating in terms of investments, in terms of being part of the progress within EDP in renewables?
For sure, we are really working hard with customers to develop the solar on the roofs and supporting them financially.
But I mean the big projects.
big projects are more difficult for communities for funding. I started saying that funding is not a
Because
problem.
we have places where we have known financial criteria or known economic criteria to be evaluated, and it could be. But we have to finish up. I will give you the floor to all of you, and you can answer some of the comments. But I just need one issue for you, which is give me the 2 or 3 obstacles in a pitch of 15 to 30 seconds on the key issues for us to get to 100% renewable. For Nuno, particularly in the case of Portugal, Nuno, you can say that I need 200 people in the institute to help me on that. I say you can do it if you think that's reasonable. But what for your institution and in your particular case, what is your what would be your demand to reach 100% renewables in electricity at least as soon as possible? Maybe you can come from Noor again to this side. So the pitch and a small, short comment on everything that you heard.
Okay, so I think what we need is policy and finance to work together. Still, we haven't optimized the opportunity there, and I'll say a bit more about that. We absolutely need effective community engagement, and we absolutely do need to ensure that we work across boundaries, that we have much more collaboration between civil society, industry, scientists and communities. That's missing. There's not enough of that going on. And let me just give you a little story I heard when I was at the last meeting, just before this one, at the Nordics Pavilion. Somebody there told me a story about 2 islands very close to each other, 2 different renewable energy companies investing in renewables on both islands. And there was one island where it all went really, really well, and the people there loved it, and they were benefiting from it, and the investment had gone smoothly and gone fast, and everybody was happy, and they were recognizing the benefits, both in having access to clean, affordable energy, and also some jobs that went with it. And on the other island next to them, disaster. Absolute disaster, very unhappy people, problems deploying the renewables energies, and still, apparently today, they're having problems. And I asked, well, what was the difference? And they said, early engagement with the community and really taking an approach that listened to their needs, made them feel part of the plans from the beginning, and also involved the local authorities as well. And I think that tells a very powerful story. I'm sure there are other examples elsewhere. And lastly, all I'll say is I did mention policy. There are some great examples of best practice, but right now, policy doesn't sufficiently recognize and reward market leaders for those good practices. So some of the companies that are invested in degraded lands, repurposing former coal mines, and restoring nature whilst also co-locating solar and wind, we don't yet have the policy frameworks that recognize and reward that fully and create a race to the top. There are lots of ideas how we can do that, and if any of you are interested, I'd love to discuss those with you more.
Thank you, Noor. Antonella?
So I'm talking not about 100 renewable electricity. I'm talking about 99 point something renewable energy, okay? And if we want to achieve...
It's more technical.
If we want to achieve that, we need to phase out direct and indirect subsidies to fossil fuels. Number 1. Number 2, we need to make electricity, and in particular renewable electricity, cheaper. Because today we pay much more for electricity than for alternatives that are much more polluting. Number 3, we need to build for people, with people, because this cannot be a transition that is done against people. We will have revolution, we will have a populist government. We can forget about that. We will lose 10 years, and then we have lost 10 years. And finally, nature has a lot of solutions. So we should stop looking at a solution in this or that. let's put everything together. In complexity, we will find the sustainable solution that will drive us to full decarbonization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yolanda,
Okay,
you're going to lower the price of electricity, right?
of course. But it's very nice to end the session with a wish list because, well, I would say first, if we want to be 100% renewables, we need to develop the grid. I hope that you were saying that, but you didn't say, so I say it. We need to develop the grid. We have to reinforce the grid and be conscious that without the grid, we won't be able to be 100% renewable. The second thing that I would ask for will be permitting. We need to make the permitting more agile. And we can't afford to have 2.5 years for permitting facility. It's impossible because you won't get the targets. And third, of course, social acceptance. You need to have the social acceptance. We have to work hard to get it, but it's crucial to have this social acceptance. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There are some consistency in some of the aspects, I see.
So let's break this consistency
Okay.
and say that I don't agree that we should lower the price, because lowering the price of the energy makes people less concerned about efficiency, and people needs to be more efficient on the use of the energy, because one part of the energy that we are producing is being lost. And so when we are thinking on having more production and we are getting more pressure under the natural systems, we need to look first to efficiency
The
and
reduction of the waste.
go further, not only the waste in the grid, also the waste in the grid, but also because the price is the only mechanism that you have to control the concern that people have on the efficiency on the use. Actually it is, but okay, we can discuss after that. And so as long as we are concerned about the production and being more agile on permitting, we need to go further on the efficiency of the use of the energy. And also, and the third, and I finish with this, we need to go also further on the decentralization of the production. We cannot only look for big PVs or huge offshore parks, and we need also to look to decentralization to the energy communities and all other tools that we have on hand to tackle this problem. If we focus only on the Repower EU, looking where have we got sun to make huge installations for the production, we are going on the wrong way, because the area that we are using for that will not be available for other also important uses.
So I thought you were going to ask, on your wish list, I thought you were going to ask for many people to help you.
If we can have an integrated approach with all the dimensions at the same level, doing the right investments and tackle the problem in the different dimensions that it has, I think in the end the administration will follow the needs to
So it's not
be
only
more agile on the
So it's not
permitting.
it's not an issue just of money and resources, which are necessary.
It's also an issue of intelligence. We need to look in an integrated way and not only look. We are looking for a magic solution. There's no magic solution. It's complex, it's hard, and we need to look it on an integrated way.
Thank you very much. It's almost 3 o'clock. I really appreciate your participation here, and to the ones outside here through the internet that followed us. It's going to be recorded. It was recorded, so it is a very important discussion that we had here. Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Antonella, Yolanda, and Nuno. It was a hard competition that I believe we won. but yes, again, thank you also to the Portuguese Ministry of Environment and Climate Action to enable this event today here. And of course, Zero is the first one to acknowledge you for this participation. Thank you.